Hey guys, this is Dwight with Defying Finance, and today I wanted to talk about a potential food shortage. I know I mentioned that in some of my other videos, but finally the media's catching on to this a little bit. Let's see if I can close that. A couple of news articles here, one from New York Post, one from Al Jazeera, and one from the Wall Street Journal. I wanted to mention some of the places that we've been in the past, some places I have one of our family members invested in right now, and why I trust these areas, at least for the time being, right? So the first thing I want to go over is this whole thing with Russia and Ukraine. A lot of people don't realize Russia and Ukraine are very wealthy when it comes to commodities like wheat and corn or potash. Like Russia, I think, is the largest producer. We'll read about that here. But this stuff's really important, right? Because there's different components that go into the fertilizer, and if you don't have all the components, then it's kind of worthless, right? So the United States is a very large producer of wheat, so we export quite a bit, which is a good thing for us because we don't have to import it from these places, but other areas around the world have to import a lot of this wheat and corn and especially certain types of oils, I think safflower oil. But we do have to import things like potash for fertilizer, and Russia is very big in that. So that can cause a lot of problems if they decide to sanction other countries by giving real stuff. Right? It's one thing to sanction a country financially and they work their way around it. But it's another thing when you don't get stuff, right? No food shows up, no product to increase your food supply. That's a whole nother issue, which, honestly could end up causing a world war in and of itself. But let's go over this. Just want to go over a few talking points real quick. So this says Russia is also a major manufacturer of fertilizer. In fact, it is the world's largest. Second on the list is China, which obviously we know China, if they decided to sanction other countries as well for what's going on, who knows what they're going to do with Taiwan, right? That could be a problem. It says the green market's North American fertilizer index, already high, jumped 16% last Friday. Urea, a major fertilizer ingredient, went up 22%. Potash, another major ingredient, Russia's a top producer, increased 34% in Brazil, the world's leading fertilizer importer. So obviously they would be affected a lot if Russia decided, hey, we're not going to send you any of our product anymore, if Brazil went against them, right? But we have to look into kind of who are these players, right? You have the BRICS system that they're trying to set up, where I believe it's Brazil, Russia, India, and China, where they're trying to use their own baskets of currency instead of the US dollar. So I could see Brazil remaining a partner of Russia during that time. But the price for the standard starter fertilizer, 10340, is up 49% from a year ago and likely to go higher. So that could affect the whole world, right? Without fertilizer, corn and wheat yields in the United States would decline by more than 40%. So that's a big deal. That affects us directly. Now we can get maybe product from Canada. I think we would weather this a lot better than other countries, but other countries really become the issue, because if you're kind of held hostage by a country like Russia, if they were to take over Ukraine, well, you're kind of going to do whatever they say. So because you want to eat, that's the biggest thing, right? But as prices promise to go much higher, farmers will either have to skimp on fertilizer or raise prices of their own products. Well, it's going to be really hard to raise prices considering the inflation of the government printing so much money. That's the true definition of inflation. The rising prices is an effect of that, but eventually you hit a point where people just can't afford this stuff, or they start cutting out, their vacations and other things like this in order to eat, which generally happens in a hyperinflation, by the way. So let's go over here. They have a lot of great info here. More than a quarter of the world's wheat exports come from Russia and Ukraine. There's a better infographic below I'll go to here. You can see kind of where their wheat ends up going. So you can see a potential partnership with Russia and Egypt remaining. It's surprising to see Turkey here because Turkey is also providing drones to Ukraine now, so this is going to be a very interesting relationship. Russia could sanction Turkey with wheat, and they are a huge buyer of Russia's wheat. So yeah, does it affect Russia? Sure, but they can find a place to sell that to, right? Somebody's going to buy it, especially in a food shortage. So that's a powerful weapon these commodities are becoming. So the top wheat exporters around the world, we see Russia, of course, United States. So being an exporter, we aren't quite affected the same, right? Because we produce enough to be able to export to other parts of the world. We can see our close partner here, Canada. So being that our countries are connected to each other, at least we have the ability to produce wheat unless we have issues with fertilizer. And you can see Ukraine down here is about number 5. Just keep going down. Consider the breadbasket of Europe. 71% of Ukraine's land is agricultural. It is also home to a quarter of the world's black soil. So if you think about how large Ukraine really is, I think it's the largest. What is it? The largest country in Europe? I don't think Russia's included in that. I think if you just take Ukraine and piece that together with the European Union, it would be the largest. So that's a big deal. But while Russia is the world's biggest exporter of wheat, among other products, Ukraine is the biggest exporter of seed oil. So there's going to be a lot of effects, right? This ends up affecting all kinds of products. So for example, everyone who's a vegetarian or a vegan, these products that have wheat in them, like you have these gluten hot dogs, all these types of things will be affected dramatically. And I know the meat eaters out there are like, yeah, these vegetarians, they're going to get screwed. But the reality is you need the fertilizer to grow the feed that they're feeding the cows. Because unfortunately, in the United States, we don't have many grass-fed cows. We feed them all corn and garbage pretty much. So that's going to affect them. Chickens. I mean, it's just there's going to be all kinds of chaos with this, right? So let's go to the Wall Street Journal here. I highlighted some of this stuff. Russia and Ukraine together supply almost 1/3 of the world's wheat, 1/4 of its barley, and nearly 3/4 of its sunflower oil. Commercial activity in Ukraine's ports has stopped since Russia's invasion. It will be hard for farmers to harvest their crops later this summer and export those grains. So something to think about here is this will be sort of a lagging effect. You can see it a little bit in the markets right now. People are buying futures contracts, expecting there to be shortages, but you don't see it quite as much yet in the grocery store. But harvest time is coming in Ukraine. And if you can't harvest it, I mean, everything operates on what's called a just-in-time system, right? Where we don't store stuff as much as we did anymore. Or in the past, we end up getting that stuff when we need it, which sounds great until you have a situation like this, right? This is similar. I would say actually it's not as bad as like a natural disaster where, say, an entire field of wheat had burned down or something, right? You don't get that back. Technically, the war could stop, or they could allow harvesting to happen, right? And maybe you don't have that shock, but you just don't know what's going to happen. And this is already a volatile situation, right? You don't know where this is going to go. It's not looking good. So I would put this pretty close to a natural disaster in the sense that you can't just, it's not like COVID, right? Where supply chains get messed up or something. This is, once it doesn't grow, it's not there. You can't buy it. You just can't, print this stuff like United States currency, right? It's real. So you'll feel these effects over the following year and a half as supply starts to dwindle. But last week, Norwegian fertilizer giant Yara International said its European ammonia and urea production is running at less than half of normal capacity because of record high natural gas prices in the region. So you can see how many things kind of play into each other when you get into the commodities markets, and everything that you buy, everything that you use, right? Everybody's worried about their gas prices right now, but think of all the things that are plastic, right? They're all made with oil. So all kinds of stuff is going to be climbing in price. So you're going to see the price inflation, but what makes it even worse is when the government causes inflation by printing money, right? That's what inflation really is. It's an expansion of a money supply. The results are rising prices. Now, obviously, you could have rising prices, based on demand and the supply of something. Like I said, if you have a hurricane and all your oranges get wiped out, and there was a large producing state like Florida, right? Then yeah, you would see orange prices go up wherever you can get them. So you add on top of that the government printing a bunch of money all around the world, right? This is happening everywhere, pretty much everywhere. And prices are going up all over the world. So it's not because Putin is doing this. That was a dumb comment that, our government made about that. But where would you be investing in this time, right? Now, I believe because of inflation, I didn't plan on this happening, right? As war, but because of inflation, I want to be in the commodities market, right? And I think over the next 10 years, as long as the government continues to print this money, we're going to see real stuff go up in price. And, I haven't even checked actually if the nickel market's still closed. I know it was closed for a week. That doesn't happen, right? This is crazy. But anyway, one of the ways we've been playing this market is we got in right around this location with RJA and RJI. Now, these are, if you don't know who Jim Rogers is, go look him up. Just, brilliant investor, old guy now. He lives in China now, but just a great investor. Anyway, he came up with these ETFs here, and we'll check those out and look at their holdings here in a minute. But just looking at their chart, this has been a great run already. We did not expect it to explode as quick as it did. Even before all this happened, we can see July 2020, the trajectory it's on is just like mind-blowing, right? It's not Bitcoin, but it's incredible for like you would see in the stock market. But I do expect this to continue long-term as long as the government continues to print money, right? We're going to see that inflation. I don't believe the government's going to continue to be able to raise these rates through the roof. You would have a real estate collapse. Credit would tighten dramatically, right? You would have a massive collapse in the stock market. So I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off like, they're claiming. But let's move this out to a weekly chart, get a better look at it. See, we haven't even hit any of the old highs. So we still got a ways to go. So I would be watching this. I don't think you can see where the 50-day kind of crossed everything. That means we got some great strength. 100 days crossing the 200-day. So I think we got a long road on this, although I don't think it stays at this level. Potentially with a war, I was thinking, more something like this. If we could see this explode higher, it just really depends on what happens with this war, what happens in a famine situation. But what you would have to be careful in this, I would be watching something like price controls with government. If they start limiting countries' ability to sell this stuff, your costs of fuel, for example, continue to climb. Well, how are you supposed to farm, right? You got a problem. So eventually you start cutting the supply, which really makes it worse on everybody. And then you have the other commodities index. This one's more on the agricultural side. We could pull up kind of what they have for assets under management. I had another one up here. I'll have to bring up we could look at their holdings here in a second, but RJI is kind of another form. I'll break it down here in a second, but another great play. I think this will continue going higher. Don't get caught up in the noise of this, these big jumps. Although it's great, maybe you trade it. I still think we'll kind of work our way up over time. But here's the two side by side here. So you can see one is based on the commodities, one is the agricultural commodity. But what's great is you can see the assets under management here. You could take the assets under management and divide it by the outstanding shares to kind of see, what would the fair price be. And sometimes you'll be able to buy these even cheaper than what the actual shares are trading for. So let's say, for example, you see we have 205 million assets under management. But if we were to look at this, let's say the price fell down to $5, right? Well, if the price of these shares are down to $5 and you can buy $205 million in assets, right? Just because the price of the ETF doesn't necessarily reflect the value of the commodity that they're holding, right? So again, I talked about this in my gold video. You can buy some of these at a discount. Although with the markets ripping like this, I wouldn't expect to be able to buy anything at a discount for quite some time. So if you look at both of these, you could check out their holdings. So RJA, you can see 20% in wheat, you have corn and cotton and soybeans. I mean, this is great. This also has some oil in it, but if you wanted some exposure to wheat, but you wanted to play more of the oil side, this is a great one to use. You have some other metals in here, which you aren't going to have in this side because it sticks more to the agricultural side. But you still have a little bit of gold in here. You can, use this as a play if you didn't want to actually buy into like a mining stock or buy something like Sprott Holdings for their gold or things like that. Of course, what's nice is you have copper. There's a lot of electric cars that at least they're pushing for it, right? But you get a lot of exposure to different types of things in here, or you could go more the agricultural side and be the farmer, right? Or you could hold both. Just depends on how much you want to invest, right? Now, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but this is how I would be playing this for the time being, because you're all going to be paying a lot more money for food and gas and all this stuff. Most of it is due to governments printing money around the world, but I think this whole war is going to make it a lot worse. If it turns into World War III, all bets are off. I don't know where these go. I mean, the prices could explode, but governments could also make you ration, right? So that would affect the companies. So their profits obviously would drop dramatically. So maybe you'd be selling at that point. So there's a lot of different variables right now. I'd be watching for one of these situations to happen and base my decision to sell on that. So if I woke up in the morning and I saw that the government said, we're going to start rationing, and the whole world starts rationing wheat. Well, I'm probably going to begin selling at that point. It could start tanking overnight. Generally, it would drive the price up. So I think we're heading into a worldwide potential famine, right? Maybe we don't experience it as much in our country here in the United States, maybe in Canada, but other countries are really, really going to be hurting because of this. So this will be a long-term kind of situation, right? Kind of like the shipping issues we were having with all the supply chains. And that could get even messier, right? One thing people aren't thinking about here is, what if China decided to sanction the United States and say, yeah, we're not going to sell you anything anymore. No more t-shirts, no more shoes. I mean, think of all the stuff you buy in your store, like whatever you buy, clothing, right? All this stuff just stopped coming here. And you'd be saying that, oh yeah, but then China's economy would crash. Well, maybe. But if they don't want the dollars because they're afraid they're going to get sanctioned, then what's it matter to them, right? They'll sell it to somebody else. There's somebody else that can consume it. And plus, if you're thinking, no way, man, the United States is the biggest buyer, well, think about it. Our trade deficit is massive, meaning we owe them. We're sending them bogus paper, right? And they're sending us real stuff. So in the end, it's like if you were loaning your neighbor like your weed eater, your lawnmower, all these types of things, and he's giving you these, yeah, IOUs, I'll pay you at some point, right? Will he? That's the question, right? Remember when Trump was in office and he said, well, maybe we just don't pay China back, right? We're not going to pay back the treasuries that they hold. We've already made that threat before. So keep that in mind. Our whole world would change here in the United States. I don't think most people could handle something like that. But anyway, this video has already gone a little bit too long, but I just wanted to show kind of two plays that we're using, and kind of talk a little bit about the market and what's going on in the world right now, what to be watching for. But anyway, I don't know where you're watching this video from. Make sure you like it, comment, share your opinion on there. Other people, like to see that. Sometimes there's conversations and new charts or other videos that I haven't seen yet. So share those in there as well. But be careful clicking on links too. But also watch an ad. It's free content. It only costs you a few seconds of your time. Doesn't cost you any money, right? But anyway, have a good one. I'll try to get this out there, and good night.